said it was clean, too cheap to meter. Built the dome and cooked the beaker. Said the rod was safely sealed in drums, but left them leaking out of Idaho slums. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. They chase the sun, all fusion proud. Ignore the barrels stacked in clouds. Promise stars in every socket, while curium settled in the market. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. Chart is clean, while whales rolled up inside the submarine. Blame the algae, blame the rain, but never trace the gamma chain. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. Now the rods are rusting, the record spins. Mama warned them, too many sins. Keep your son, keep your lab coat pride, till you fix the waste you tried to hide. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the madness. A few problems there, trying to get the show up and running. My apologies for the inconvenience. I got to reinstall the operating system on my external. It just keeps crashing on me. That's why I was a few minutes late. Well, I wasn't expecting to do a show tonight. I'm sure nobody expected a show. We didn't do a show on Thursday. I was sick the whole day, the night before. We ended our show early on Wednesday. I was too sick. I spent all night and cleaning out my stomach, throwing up. Bad headache all day yesterday, aches and pains. Couldn't get warm. You know, the routine. And so today I'm not 100%, but we get another show, and that's important. Trespass in Fukushima nuclear area live streamed. We cover a lot of people that just, but apparently they go in with permission. Some Ukrainians went in there without permission. And I guess that scared them because Ukrainians know a bit about radiation, right? And they were wearing a mask and all kinds of equipment. So I guess they had Geiger counters and other stuff. So the police arrested them. It would have been nice to catch that live stream. My apologies, I'm very thirsty. Dehydrated from Wednesday and yesterday. 3 Ukrainian men arrested for live streaming their unlawful entry into a vacant home. As if, you know, these are nuclear wastelands. In Akuma, which is right close to the nuclear plant, so maybe they were filming the nuclear plant because you can see it from Akuma, which is north, just a couple of kilometers. And so you can see the Diachi site from there. An area is still under evacuation orders due to high radiation. Catastrophic radiation is more like it. Viewers saw the stream and called the police. A viewer. So most likely that was just the pro-nuclear community panicking. In Okuma and other difficult-to-return zones, homes and schools remain abandoned due to lingering radiation. Homes and schools. What about businesses and universities and hospitals and banks and car sales and malls? Lingering. Like, you had 36 reactor cores melt down and 8 fuel pools at the top of 4 reactor buildings. This planet has never seen anything close to this kind of pollution, radioactive fallout covering the whole planet. And the poll tonight was media, universities, and the nuclear industry wrong to cover up Fukushima's lethal effects, on species worldwide. And so I can't bring up the poll. I'm going to reset the PC and hopefully this doesn't crash on me. And let's keep our fingers crossed, hope for the best. Many of the buildings have stood empty over a decade. It's a nuclear wasteland, for goodness sakes. Some untouched, others swallowed by over. Like, even there, they try to play it down. Silent reminders of lives uprooted by the nuclear disaster. Silent, uprooted. There was 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. Heart attacks, people death by heart attacks skyrocketed to about 120,000 extra people a year that we know of, that they admit to. Thyroid tumors in children went from 1 in a million to 365,000 in a million. $865,000 extra cancers just in the first year. Not everybody has health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. Last summer in neighboring Fukushima town, which is south a kilometer, it's joined on around to the nuclear site, but the community is about a kilometer away. A video circulated online showing a person believed to be a foreign national wearing a yellow hazmat suit and walking through a school building where backpacks and school supplies were left behind in a nuclear wasteland. The incident prompted heightened vigilance from local authorities that don't live there, that shouldn't never be there in the first place. Uh, 16th of March 2011. So this is day 5. Fire and steam. Like, when a nuclear plant blows up, you don't call that steam. It's kind of like steam, but it's lethal. If you're like Tarzan, you swing through it, you die when you come out the other side. At the Japan's damaged, and this was destroyed, and they even show you this picture of 4 buildings destroyed. Destroyed nuclear meltdowns. A nuclear meltdown is different than a destroyed building. It's a nuclear meltdown, so it deserves much more prominence. A damaged nuclear plants spread radiation. Worries. But when you show us that picture, each of these buildings are equal to 800 Chernobyls. You're talking about 9 reactors at the top of the buildings. Each reactor is equal to 100 Chernobyls. Chernobyl was a graphite reactor. It was a new reactor. It didn't have fuel pools full of decades of reactor cores at the top of the building. On Wednesday, Japanese officials worried about a new fire and possible cracks in 2 nuclear reactors. When you look at this picture, you're looking at the annihilation, nuclear meltdowns in 4 buildings and 8 fuel pools. Day 6 of Japan's nuclear emergency. It's not a nuclear emergency, it's a nuclear event at that stage. This is something that you can't change. I went from 18 viewers to 12 just on a click in a matter of 2 seconds. Let's keep her going here. Not going to get a full show in, but we'll get a show in. Day 6 of Japan's nuclear emergency brought few signs of relief to the troubled nation. People woke to the news that there had been a second fire in the number 4 reactor building. There's the number 4 to your left. Does that look like a fire or total annihilation? A billow of steam, and it's absurd and disgusting. It's criminal. These people should be in jail for the rest of their lives for even suggesting this is steam. Raised fears that 2 of the structures that contain radioactive material inside the reactor building have been damaged. And fluctuating radiation levels at the nuclear plant made it difficult for workers to combat the problem. Like, there is nothing that a human can do here. Your organs melt right away. Oh crap, here we go. This is utter destruction we're talking about. This is nuclear meltdowns. These are forever, and they're catastrophic to every species on the planet. So why would you call it crippled, or why would you call it steam? Why would you call it anything but what it is a catastrophic event for 8 million species and every human? This industry has no right to do what it's doing. It has no right to misrepresent and downplay every facet of this. I got my new lenses. Wow, what a leaf. The old lenses were totally destroyed. They were trying to do field studies. And they got it out of the case. And so my camera has a cage around it, a steel cage. And so these things got punished. Pretty rough. I was in pretty rough shape yesterday, my goodness. I couldn't even look at a TV. I couldn't look at a light. It was a horrible experience. So I'm glad I feel much better today. Anything's better than what yesterday was. The new fire was discovered by the Tokyo Electric Power Company worker at 5:45 a.m. Like the time of reactor 4. So this is what it looked like the day before to your left. So what they decided to do was just pretend that it wasn't. Same thing with reactor 3 behind me. Like, it's unconscionable that they done that. It's unconscionable that they downplayed this so much. Let me just zoom in on reactor 4 to your left here. So this is what it looked like the day before. If that was your building, you were on vacation, your manager sent you this picture and said there's a little bit of damage, would you be screaming or would you fire him? Hopefully you'd fired him. The fire in number 4 has raised fears that similar incidences could occur at number 5 and number 6, which also were shut down for maintenance. So when the reactor is shut down for maintenance, what it means is they're probably going to do around 11,000 different types of maintenances. 11,000. They're going to bring in an extra 1,000 people, and they're going to be transients because they don't want them to get into the cancer statistics down the road. And they're going to take out about 1/3 of the reactor core. So 2/3 is going to be left in the reactor. 2/3. No one has been able to say with certainty what caused yesterday's fire. Well, it had no water. And then once the fuel is exposed, the zirconium catches fire. At 1800 degrees, it ignites the plutonium and uranium pellets that burn at 9,000 degrees. Every academic on the planet in the nuclear industry knows exactly why the fire happened. Or the new fire today. Well, the new fire today was just element of yesterday, the day before, rather. TV footage of the damage caused yesterday showed 2 huge holes in the wall of the reactor, as well as substantial damage to the roof. 2 holes in the wall to the building to your left. Let me see, can you spot 2 holes in the walls? Can you actually spot 2 holes in the wall to your left? Can anybody spot 2 holes in the walls to the left? What the hell is going on here? What have I done to myself now? Bear with me. I must have reset that or something. That's always my luck anyway. Hang on, let me fix that. I got no idea why I done that. Almost there. Almost is not quite good enough, is it? We'll get it there. Hang on, I should show up. Almost any second here. There we are. Can you see any the 2 holes in that building? I can't see 2 holes in the building. Can you? These are monsters, boy. Show 2 holes in the walls of the reactor building. I got no idea what they're talking about. When I look at that building, I can't see 2 holes in the wall. My PC is 47% reset to reinstall the operating system. Some experts surmise that the water levels in the storage dropped after circulation failed. This is day 6. It needs 120,000 liters a day. So after 5 days, it's 500,000. That's 600,000 liters. So it's safe to say the fuel rods were exposed, they caught fire, and it blew up. Day 6 of Japan's nuclear emergency brought few signs of relief. Day 6. Well, that's what it looked like on day 5. This is what I mean. Like, the industry is insane. This is insane. How is this acceptable? And why is it every journalist on the planet decided to just throw the entire planet under the bus for a corporation, for an industry? Another possibility was sloshing the water may have sloshed out of the storage pool due to the earthquake shaking. Look, whatever happened, it happened. But it's a nuclear meltdown, and you lost the reactor cores in the fuel pools, which is around 8 reactor cores. NHK, the Japan national broadcaster, reported 783 fuel rods held in a number 4 building storage pool. Well, there's 100 fuel rods in assembly, and in 2013 they claimed they took out 1,540 assemblies. So 1,540 times 100. 15,000, right? Which is a far cry from 783. But this was the cover story, was being planted right then. Rods. Regardless of whether the water circulation stopped or water sloshed out, the exposure of the spent fuel likely started the fire. Well, bravo. The disgusting, perpetually evil New York Times reporting that the actual substance burning in the buildings were lubrication oil from the machinery near the storage pool. So they said this wasn't the reactor cores and the fuel pools burning, it was oil. New York Times. And there's nobody holds them accountable under any circumstances. They can tell as many lies as they friggin' want, and there's no one's going to hold them accountable. There's no incentive not to be evil. And so if we don't come out and talk about it, nobody will actually come out. If we don't come out and show you the documentation, nobody will. How is that acceptable? How can that ever be acceptable? Do the people to your left or to your right, do you think that they're 100 feet above that building to the left? So which is CBS, BBC Rupert Winfield Hayes, ABC Australia, how the reason that they feel confident in coming out and telling these lies is because nobody's going to hold them accountable. And it's always been that way. How is that? How are we supposed to have a future when that's the norm? When the norm is to destroy all the species and the health of everybody so that the nuclear industry can look good for another couple of years. What's the point of that? A cloud rises. A cloud rises. And so they don't even have the integrity to call it what it is. It's a radioactive plumes. Meanwhile, white steam, which is not steam at all, it's steam, but it's radiation particulates. It's fuel particulates. So the particulates, wherever they land, are still splitting atoms. It's worse than radioactive fallout. It's a radioactive death machine. It's a death plume. White steam was reported billowing out of number 3 reactor building early in the morning, and it was damaged in an explosion on Monday. Does that look like it's damaged? The building is actually missing. An NHK helicopter 30 kilometers away, filmed the emissions that continue to rise, the emissions. Just incapable of being humans. That's what the best way to describe a journalist or an academic or a scientist or somebody from a professor or anybody from a university is somebody that's incapable of being a human. They're incapable. And what? You send your children there because you're stupid. Oh. Cover-up culture. I love it. From the number 3 reactor containment vessel, there's no containment, there's no vessel, and there's no fuel pools. They were all ejected. They were ejected right out of the building. That's the thumbnail for the show tonight, which probably accounted for the rise in radiation levels recorded at 10:45 a.m. Idano, who should be in jail or getting the death penalty for the rest of his life for what he done, said workers were trying to inject water into the number 3 reactor system. Do anybody really think they're going to inject water into a nuclear meltdown? That is unbelievably offensive that they had done that and got away with it. And all your media done it to you. But I can't handle that anymore. I can't sit in silence. I can't pretend that oh, well, they lied. I can't let that go. And if anybody had any kind, if you're new here and you don't know nothing about this, you should be outraged. Idano said, and Idano is one of the worst humans in the history of humanity to exist, said workers trying to inject water in number 3 reactor system had to evacuate temporarily. And they returned to the plant after 1 hour when the radiation levels fell. The radiations don't fall. They never fall for years and years and years. When you have a spike in radiation, it's never going to be safe enough to go back to. And to pretend that it was and say what they said is the reason we haven't got any whales or birds or mammals or insects on this planet. In about 4 or 5 years, this entire planet is in for the biggest shock of their lives. All the grey whales will be gone next year. There's 13,000 out there right now. They'll be gone next year. And they're all emaciated. The food chain is broken. Because Fukushima covered the bloody planet in less than 20 days. So let me fix that. Almost. I can see my finger. I can still see my finger. It's just like the reason that we are in so much problems is because they lied and we didn't hold them accountable. There was no one to hold them accountable. The International Atomic Energy Agency spends every waking minute cutting your throats worldwide and making sure we can't have a future. The industry has never been held accountable. We don't know for sure what is causing the steam. Really, you don't know what's causing that, eh? It's called nuclear meltdowns. The remnants you ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right out of the building. This is the 16th of March. Everything was gone. Except for a fraction, right? But it seems the earlier hydrogen explosion had damaged a valve or something. Really, you think there's a valve damage, does you? This wasn't a hydrogen explosion, by the way. This was a pressure explosion. The reactors typically need 6,450,000 tons of water a day. Think of 6,450,000 one-ton pickup trucks with 2,200 pounds of water in the back of it, 1,000 liters of water in the back of each of the 6,450,000 one-ton pickup. It's a row of one-ton pickup trucks of water wrapped around the entire planet. That's what a reactor uses each day, a single reactor building. If the containment vessel in number 3 reactor was damaged by Monday's explosion, it increases the possibility that radioactive material will escape the reactor and contaminate the site. You mean the planet, right? Will contaminate the site. When the reactor core and the fuel pools fell back down, there is no human can exist on that site. It's surreal that there's no repercussions for being monsters in the nuclear industry. And so the monster every year is more sadistic. To add to the confusion, the Nuclear and Industrial Safety Agency said it had measured high radiation levels near the number 2 reactor. As of now, the source of the leaking radiation is not clear. Well, this is what it looked like on the 15th, the day before. You had 4 reactors in a row and 8 fuel pools melted down. So like every sentence that they tell you in a story is a lie. And you can't cover every lie the industry tells you. The number 2 reactor has caused considerable worry. Well, number 2 is in between reactor number 1 meltdown and number 3 reactor meltdown, and we know it was confirmed meltdown. They don't show you pictures, I show you pictures. These people are insane. Right alongside of number 2 is the missing reactor 3 and 4. TEPCO, which shouldn't be in the equation because it's not a decommission authority, it's not a decommission company. They left them in charge because that way you don't blame the nuclear industry, who should be blamed. TEPCO informed the government on Wednesday that they're having trouble injecting water in the number 3 reactor. Do you think they can inject water into that? That doesn't even exist anymore. Because radiation levels risen to 300 to 400 millisieverts per hour, making it dangerous for plant workers to stay on site. No, even to get on the site, on the massive site, you're not going near the reactors. There's nothing you can do. They're melted down. And you're talking about 4 of them in a row. Like, the misrepresentation of facts was 1,000%. The number 3 reactor building is roof blown off in Monday's explosion. Does that look like the roof is blown off or the building is gone? It's just, how can you sit in silence and tolerate that. How does that make the planet better? How does them lying make our planet better? The roof not blown off. The building was ejected. The reactor core, the fuel pool, and half the building was thrown about 2 miles straight up. It's pretty crazy. Firefighters? What do you mean firefighters? They don't know anything about nuclear. Why would you send them in there? See, this industry is sadistic. And that's their old shit plan, right? Oh, we'll send in the firefighters because they know nothing about nuclear. They don't know up, they don't know down, they don't know left, they don't know right. To spray water over the buildings and have a ground crew ready to inject water once the radiation levels became low enough. The radiations will be thousands of years before they become low enough that they won't melt your organs when you get within 100 feet. Perpetual lies is what this industry's entire legacy is predicated upon. Perpetual lies. It couldn't exist a single week or month without perpetual lies. International schools are closed because worried families are taking their children out of the country. Worried, not what you mean smart families. And a growing number of both smart foreigners and smart Japanese are also escaping the nuclear wasteland to abroad. The Institute of Applied Energy said even as the crisis continues to unfold, he has begun to look ahead to the future of the nuclear industry in Japan. So this nuclear industry is the Achilles heel of 8 million species. TEPCO plans to add 2 larger 1.36 gigawatt reactors to the site, but this has been postponed. Calling the industry evil is the most politest thing you can call it. Japan's nuclear accident, worse and worse again. So this was the 12th of March. This was the next day. In all 3 of the most serious nuclear power plants accidents, pessimistic scenarios have proven not pessimistic enough. They played down every event in history to the point of, and I mean, they misrepresented every facet of every nuclear accident in history on top of that by orders of magnitudes. In all 3 of the most serious nuclear power plant accidents, well, there's a lot more than 3 on this planet. This is the 12th of March. Reactor 1 has exploded. The fuel pools, 8 reactor cores were burnt off, cooked off. Editor's note, this is part of our ongoing news coverage of Japan's earthquake and nuclear emergency. And what it was, this story, instead of worrying about the victims, right, that were going to be harmed, and the species being wiped out and everything else, and contamination of the entire planet, they worried about the nuclear industry getting a black eye. In the disastrous accident unfolding at Japan's Fukushima nuclear power plant, essentially the same chain of events has unfolded 3 times. First, the failure of the backup system meant to keep the cooling system running. If the plant lost external power, the reactors are dependent upon external power. So each reactor core, each reactor plant needs 6,500 or 6,450,000 one-ton pickup trucks of water a day. How much external power does that take? Because it's enough water, like you can only put 1 ton of water, 1,000 liters in the back of a 1-ton pickup truck. And so if you wrap the entire planet in 1-ton pickup trucks of water, that's how much water each plant needs a day. How much? That's 25,000 miles of water. How much energy does it take to move 25,000 miles of water in 24 hours? It's absurd. It needs a dedicated 2 dedicated coal, gas, and oil plants every day to keep it running. And that's, we're only talking about pushing water. We're not talking about the rest of the facility. The entire facility is dependent on external power. And then the explosion of the outer containment building. Every time I hear that, we're talking about, this is day one, right? But the law is well formed. I mean, clearly the laws are packaged, right? And then when the event happens, they're put out to the propaganda machines. You call it media for some reason. Emergency operators flooded the reactor vessels with seawater to cool them and stop core melting. See, the problem was you had a tsunami walk right through the site at 400 miles per hour. And when a tsunami runs through your community at 400 miles per hour, the results are just bear with me. Let me get a picture that tells a better story than. Yeah, here we go. So like, when a tsunami runs through your community or anywhere else, the whole story is just so sad. But what made it worse was all your universities and all your medias worked full time to destroy your ability to think critically. So this is the typical community in Japan. So the nuclear plant is no different. So once the tsunami runs through that site, you're not going to fix anything, right? Emergency operators flooded the reactor vessels with seawater to cool them and stop the core meltdown. Well, you couldn't do that when you had 1,200 kilometers of coastline and telephone poles and infrastructure ripped off the coastline, which ultimately, the debris out in the Pacific Ocean was 2,000 square miles, the size of Texas. Right, there was no power there. There was no way to pump water in. And when reactor 1 exploded, you ejected reactor cores from the fuel pools all over the site. Just let me show you a picture of the explosion from reactor 1. So this is the explosion of reactor 1. These are 190 foot tall, 19-story, 190 foot, 65 meter buildings. And this is a death plume. If you're there, you die. And if you're there tomorrow, you die. Or if you're there in a week's time, you die. In 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time. Anywhere there, your organs melt. There's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't matter how stoic you are. So it's completely dishonest. It's completely dishonest to suggest you're putting water into the buildings when, like the tsunami, this is the site, the Fukushima Dai-1 site itself. Once that runs through your site, you are not doing anything. There's nothing functional. And when I say that, when I say this stuff, is because we have the documentation of everything, that we can get our hands on, which is an absurd amount. And I don't make assertions that are not based on facts. It's just simply, what would be the point of doing that? Why would you bother to try to? So this is April the 1st. Let's move ahead. Those people died that day, or within a couple of hours of that. What they're doing is they're spraying what's known as a reagent to bind to the particulates and the fuel particulates that are splitting atoms to lower the dose. And these are the Fukushima 50s that you'll never, that don't, dead man tells no tales. These people died. Not maybe, not perhaps, not later, but that day. And that's why they have paper suits, garbage suits on, because they're going to be incinerated. This industry is perpetually evil. The industry doesn't have a single redeeming quality to it, not a single one. It has no right to exist. Operators also injected boron to head off of criticality. Look, when this happens, you're not injecting nothing into the reactors. You have fuel particles, fuel rods, reactor cores ejected all over the site. It's humans can't survive in that environment for more than a few minutes. Meanwhile, with some radiation escaping the plant, again, lying is just the natural, they can't exist without perpetual lies. Meanwhile, some radiation escaping the plant, the evacuation zone was expanded to 20 to 30 kilometer radius. Well, you're not gonna evacuate 20 or 30 kilometers for something to do. There was a catastrophic release from 8 reactor cores melting down at the one time and the explosion. Authorities passed out potassium iodine. It's simply not true. Authorities did jack shit. You were still rescuing people on rooftops at that point. And let me show you the video of Reactor 1 explosion so you can kind of appreciate the volatility of an explosion like that. Let me chop that off, rather. Do that again. That's a massive explosion. That's an unprecedented explosion. We've never seen anything like that in our history. That's lethal doses everywhere, and that plume itself is hideously lethal. That's instant lethal. If you're in that plume, you died. And if you go there tomorrow or the next day, the day after, your organs melt. Authorities never passed out iodine pills. There's no evidence. It doesn't prevent radioactive iodine from concentrating in the thyroid gland because you have to take at least 24 hours beforehand and causing cancer. Cancer, by the way, is only one of the many illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries that'll manifest. But it's not going to stop cancer. It's not going to stop. And iodine is a gamma. There's cesium, lots of cesium are gammas. It's just going to aggregate anywhere, wherever it aggregates, you're going to get cancer. It's just because the thyroid produces hormones for your body's function, right? And so everybody, unfortunately, on this planet are producing radioactive hormones and radioactive stem cells that are anthropogenic because of the pulse event at Fukushima. But 80 years of emissions from 1,000 fuel pools, 80 years of dumping it into the environment. It's an industry that ultimately will exterminate the planet. You don't even need a meltdown. You don't need anything. You just need fuel pools to eventually exterminate the whole planet. And there's all kinds of cancers. You can't stop cancer by taking iodate or iodine pills. It doesn't work that way. Because of the explosions and the radiation leakage, and people that use leakage in a nuclear meltdown have no right to exist on this planet. They have no human attributes worthy to be on this planet. They have no right to exist. Fukushima already ranks as the second most serious nuclear power plant accident after Chernobyl, which is a completely dishonest. Chernobyl was a new reactor. It was a graphite reactor. It was a small reactor. The Fukushima reactors, including number 1, and we're only talking about number 1 in this story, was 8 reactor cores melted down in the fuel pool and 1 in the reactor. How can you conflate? And each reactor is 100 Chernobyls because it's pure uranium, pure plutonium. And the problem is when you cover nuclear, every paragraph you're going to have multiple sentences that are outright lies. And because every story from the nuclear industry is social engineering. Right? There's no factual, useful information in a story. In terms of public impact, it may come in first. A pronounced national radiation phobia. You only need a single atom in your body to eventually turn it into a tumor. It's not a phobia, it's common sense. It's being morally right to fear nuclear. And another reason to fear nuclear is because they lie about every facet of it for 80 years. Why would they lie about every facet of it for 80 years if it had some redeeming qualities? You wouldn't, right? They lie about every facet of it because it has no redeeming qualities. You know, what blows my mind is every academic on the planet in 2012 would have seen these pictures. Every nuclear scientist, every university student, which blows my mind that every university student turned their backs on you. Because when you look at these pictures, if you know anything about the nuclear at all, like if you're an insider, you know the fuel pools are gone with 8 reactor cores in each building. A 16 reactor cores minimum gone. 16. And each reactor core is equal to 100 Chernobyls because they're pure uranium, pure plutonium. Chernobyl was a small graphite reactor. It was a new reactor. It didn't have any fuel pools. So how is it, despite the sophistication, awareness, and preparedness, that the Fukushima crisis has nonetheless exceeded the worst-case thinking? Here, the story is reminiscent of 3 Mile Island. Well, this is day 12. This is day 1, the day after Reactor 1 exploded, right? Okay. Here the story is reminiscent of 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl. The message seems to be the same. Worst case scenario builders consistently underestimate the statistical probability of separate bad things happening simultaneously. At the 3 Mile accident evolved, the nation was memorized by the buildup of hydrogen gas in the reactor vessel, a prospect no member of the general public has ever heard of before, and the dangers of it exploding. You know, 3 Mile Island was really, really something because instead of running away, people ran to the site. I can't even wrap my mind around that statement, by the way. I just reinstalled the operating system on my external. So just give me a second, see if I can bring up, because I lost all my browsers and everything else that I added onto it. I got to, just give me a second. I might be able to. Here I am. It's so crazy, eh? There's my bookmarks, yeah. Show bookmarks. And I can save that into the bookmark. Oh. Just bear with me 1 second. Here we go. See if I can sign in. Scumbags. 1 second. I might not get it right. Who knows? Let's keep her going here. As the 3 Mile accident evolved, the nation was memorized by the buildup of hydrogen gas, a prospect no member of the general public has ever heard of before, and the danger of it exploding. People actually went there. In addition, that a substantial fraction of the reactor core melted during the accident, which is really unusual for them to acknowledge that. Had it melted through the bottom of the vessel, a vast amount of the radioactivity would have found its way into the Susquehanna River and Shakespeare Bay, poisoning that water permanently. Well, that is exactly what happened, right? Actually, every major nuclear accident has been worse than worst case, and that's a fact every nuclear advocate, this one included, will have to take into account. As the scale of the Japan's nuclear emergency emerges, this is the 14th now, the 14th, so reactor 3 is melted down at this stage. Experts in Japan and the United States say the country now faces many problems with the crippled reactor. It's not crippled no longer. These are nuclear meltdowns. And so they started calling it crippled right away, which is the opposite of what you would call this. They worry that radioactive releases of steam. So why would you worry about steam? You wouldn't worry about steam, would you? Radioactive releases of steam. See, it's hard for the average person to wrap their minds around that statement. Just bear with me 1 second here. In fact, let me just play a little video while I'm trying to sign in. Do this again here. That's where I screwed up. I get it this time. This way I can bring up the comment section and everything, right? Hopefully I get it right this time. Yeah, I got it. I just gotta do that verification. Wow, how good is that? How good am I? Almost here. Score. That's crazy. That's great. All right. That seems great. Here we can bring me back into the equation now. We haven't got too much more to go, so like on the 14th, reactor 1 and reactor 3 are completely gone. Reactor 1 and reactor 3 are completely gone. Right there, here we go. We should have the chat room and everything up in a second here. I don't know if I need that much. Yeah, let's keep her going. I don't know. Input is 4. I don't know. Something. To be sure, the uncertainty makes any solid assessment impossible, but already Japan's nuclear crisis seems a serious setback for humanity. I don't know why it looks like that. It's not showing up on... I probably just got to unplug it and plug it back in. Just give me 1 second here. That doesn't want to work. I'll figure it out next time. To be sure, the uncertainties make any solid assessment and possible area to Japan's nuclear crisis seems like a serious setback for humanity's attempt to reduce quickly and decisively greenhouse gas emissions. You're not worried about greenhouse gas emissions. You're worried about nuclear fallout. And I'll show you why. Just give me a second. So this is a Neptunium-239 decays to plutonium-239 in 2.5 days. Plutonium is 24,000 years before it decays a single time, and it's named after the devil. So it covers the whole planet. So you have an invisible snowstorm of radiation particles, and each one of them are pulsing energy almost at the speed of light for 24,000 years. If it was only plutonium. Unfortunately, the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rod is curium isotopes. And so there's no other emitters on the planet with that attribute. And carbon, of course, which is absurd that we have to defend carbon, because carbon, you can't have life. Carbon is life. If you don't got carbon, you're going to look just like the moon. There's no life. There's, of course, the ill health effects of radiation releases from Japan's, and they call it stricken reactors, right? Crippled reactors, stricken reactors. Now, on that day, which is the 14th, this is what it looked like. These buildings have completely destroyed and lost decades of reactor cores. And they call them crippled and stricken. I mean, this is the problem. You got 80 years of lies from the industry. 80 years of lies. No, one cancer can't kill another cancer. Like, if you got 1,000 isotopes and man-made isotopes in your body, theoretically you can have 1,000 different tumors. What a tumor does is creates more tumors, right? Because it metastasizes. And these radiation releases will occur even if Japan avoid a full meltdown of the nuclear core. No, well, it didn't avoid a full meltdown of the nuclear core. It ejected 9 reactor cores right out of the building in that one. 8 in the first one on Friday or Saturday, on the 12th. 2 reactors at the Fukushima Dai-1 nuclear power station. Even if meltdowns are avoided, they're not avoided. They happen, period. While a repeat of Chernobyl isn't likely at this point, this was equal to 800 Chernobyls. Each reactor core is equal to 100 Chernobyls. These are pure uranium, pure plutonium reactors. At the top of the buildings are 8 more of these reactors. They're all gone in that big explosion. And the same thing for number 1 reactor. Confidence in nuclear power taking a gigantic hit. Yeah, and 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. Let's forget about that. And let's forget about the fact that cancer is just one of the many illnesses and diseases. Let's just worry about the nuclear, disgusting and dirty, hateful and demonic and sadistic nuclear industry. That's what they're doing in that story. The breakdown of nuclear safety systems in Japan has done grave damage. There was no breakdown. These things are guaranteed to melt down at some point. You can't contain it on top of it. To the elusive dream of expanding nuclear power in the hopes of bringing on stream more sources of energy that don't expand the emissions of greenhouse. Like this is the 14th. That plume over there is less than 30 days. Oh, I know what's going on. I think I do anyway. Right, you see here's a blank screen, but it's actually my window is showing on my side. But I have to have that particular running when I start up the operating system for the video to transfer over. It has to be running, right? Or it doesn't work. I forgot that. Well, I have it on my end, so that's all that really matters, I suppose, for tonight. We got it working, everything's stable. Was media, universities, and the nuclear industry wrong to cover up the Fukushima lethal effects on the species worldwide? And I can't show you because I didn't have the whole system plugged in when I fired it up. I had reinstalled my Windows operation system while we were streaming. I forgot the fact that I have to have that turned on, otherwise it won't show up. President Obama pledged to help accelerate the building of new plants. There's probably a way to do it, I just don't know how to do it. Let's keep going. So President Obama pledged to help accelerate the building of new plants. We're almost finished, so it's not a big deal. The only problem was like our favorite filmmaker, musician, if he posts a new song, we won't be able to play it. Which is... And he just done another song yesterday. It was amazing. I was too sick to... The Aurora. That was really good, man. But if he posts another one tonight, we won't be able to play it, unfortunately. That's okay. I got lots of his music there we can play, but... I'm really happy we got another stream in the nights. That's all I was trying to accomplish today. I didn't expect my operation system not to work. President Obama pledged to help to accelerate the building of new plants, which he described, as such an interesting way of framing it. Yeah, we only got 10 more of these clicks to get through, and then the show's over. Now Obama may be forced to backtrack. As he described, like you put in the own... You know, you're saying that Obama calls it clean energy, therefore what? We must call it clean energy? We see them do this all the time, see? If they had sources, they would tell you. They don't have sources. leading politicians took to Sunday talk shows and other venues to say that Japanese crisis should prompt at least a pause in the United States' efforts to restart the country's nuclear industry, if not put an end to it. And so this is just the 14th of March, day 3 at Fukushima, and they were suggesting that this should maybe even put an end to the nuclear industry in the United States. We act as if they can be run beyond their design life when the engineering... So it's quite telling how they apologized for the nuclear industry all the way through, and then when they got to the very end of it, they had these moments of reflections, these pains of conscience. And when the engineering is primitive compared to what one would build today. I think the tragedy in Japan should awaken a re-examination of our irrational exuberance about running our aging plants beyond their design life. And what are they doing now? They're running every one of the plants beyond their design life because they can't bring new ones online properly. It takes 15 or 20 years to get it to work in the US, and then it poisons everything for 50, 60 years. It's disgusting. In the United States, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission currently has applications for 20 new reactors. They were all scuttled. For proponents of nuclear power, Japan action may speed discussion over strengthening the power of the perpetually evil International Atomic Energy Agency. These people are evil. They're not a regulatory agency on top of that. Right? They don't have any authority in any country on the entire planet. Right? They're a consultant, but they're described as a watchdog, and they are zilch of a watchdog. They're the most evil organization conceivable. I'm not saying that, we proved that. And only with the emergence of a higher global standard for safety, inspections, and compliance, taken out of the hands of the national regulators, can nuclear power possibly overcome the doubt raised by Japan crisis? Like, the industry is not supposed to exist. It has no way of containing the emissions from the fuel pools. Therefore, it shouldn't exist. They surrounded almost every nuclear power plant with farms. And so they can destroy your health so you can't pay attention to them. You're too busy trying to save your friends and your families and your children because they were poisoned by the nuclear industry because you were stupid enough to buy food. And you shouldn't be stupid when you're buying food. You shouldn't be considered stupid because you bought food. But they think you're stupid because you bought food, so they're going to poison you with food from the nuclear wasteland. Every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms. Do you think that's an accident? We're not going to get this story now. We'll probably start that story on Sunday. The spent fuel danger in Japan's nuclear disaster. The Union of Unconcerned Scientists. There is no spent fuel. It was ejected right out of the building. Not maybe, not some of it, but 8 reactor cores and 8 reactor cores in the fuel pools and the reactor core. That's the most terrifying statement imaginable. That's the most terrifying statement you can ever utter. And the plume, this is 24 days of radioactive fallout. We've done research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska for 6 years, 4 to 5 months minimum a year on the ocean without coming home. The species to your left are exterminated. They're exterminated because of Fukushima. They're exterminated. They'll never come back. That's why I went back year after year to see if the species to your left would recover. They didn't. It's stripped, and that's permanent. We broke the food chain. Millions of birds were depending upon those tidal zones. That's why they're showing up emaciated everywhere worldwide. What the hell was that? Oh, because we went to that other window. Well, it seems I can't play any external music tonight. Let me see, I got other music there. We play those songs a lot. That's Less Than a Gram. I love that. That's amazing. The Scientists and Their Blob. Pink Hydrogen. Radioactive Cream Boxes. The Enrichment Man. Let's play that song tonight. Atomic Corruption. I love all of these songs. All of these songs are amazing. Let's play The Enrichment Man. It's such a great song from James Lucid on YouTube. And we'll see everybody hopefully on Sunday. I'm doing much better, but I still going to take a couple of days to recover. We're going to come back twice as strong. Have a great night. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you make it this far. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody on the next show. Here we go.
You said the world needs power. I won't disagree.
Sorry about that.
There's heat in the ground and the wind runs free. You call nuclear the future, but it won't power itself. Nuclear relies on coal more than coal needs itself. You said crypto was coming and demand would explode, that AI would load what the grid couldn't hold. But SMRs stay delayed, no ground ever breaks, and the public pays out while the promise remakes. You said it's the hour, but the plan's still the same. The technology is analog from the Cold War days. There's no place for the waste, and yuccas refused. Vented dry cast containers become the only refuge. You say you lead the charge with a federal hand. Would you vote Price Anderson or stand with the land? You call it advanced, but the cycle's well known, still chasing a fuel that should have stayed in the stone. They brought in the waste with no warning or word. No records were filed and no voices were heard. The workers got sick, yet their claims were denied. But their jobs paid well, or so at the time. Say the same line again, just a little more vague. Let the cost wash away while the lobbyists wave. It's the same old plan with a new name again. And the public keeps paying again and again. The words that you sign will be printed and praised with a ribbon and stamp on a speech full of praise. This is abundance, they'll claim as they lead. But nuclear won't build what the future will need.